Hello everyone, wishing you a wonderful day. In a vegetable field on the verge of losing the entire harvest, under the burning sun and pressure from low prices, Tu Diem keeps cutting cabbage as fast as she can, hoping to save the crop, while Toan secretly prepares a special gift for March 8th that she never expected. Will the struggle in the field change their lives, and what will that unexpected gift mean for Tu Diem? Now let's explore the story of Toan and Tu Diem together. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. The gentle light of early spring slips through the tall row of beetle palms in front of the yard, spreading thin streaks of sunlight across the damp ground that still holds the chill of the previous night. The morning air is quiet enough that the steady clucking of chickens can be heard clearly as Tu Phan scatters small handfuls of grain across the yard. The chickens rush forward, scattering and gathering again, pecking eagerly at each grain. Her hands are rough and darkened by years of sun and wind, the thick calluses on her fingers showing the long seasons she has spent working in the fields. Yet every movement remains slow and familiar, like a rhythm repeated through countless harvests. The bamboo gate lets out a faint creak. Tu Diem steps into the yard. She walks so lightly that her footsteps barely make a sound. She pauses for a moment, quietly taking in the familiar scene before speaking. The scent of dry straw, damp soil, and the sounds of the chickens create a calm atmosphere. Tu Phan lifts her head. When she recognizes Tu Diem standing by the gate, the tired expression on her face softens immediately into a warm smile. The two women sit down together on the low step in front of the house. A short silence passes between them. The moment does not feel awkward. It feels like two sisters meeting again after a long time apart, understanding each other without needing many words. Tu Diem slowly explains that she stopped by this morning to invite Tu Phan to harvest vegetables in the field. Yesterday she walked past the field and noticed many rows of cabbage already tightly formed and the mustard greens beginning to stretch upward toward flowering. If the vegetables are not cut soon, they could become too old to sell within only a few days. Tu Phan lets out a long sigh. She says the situation is exactly like that. Since the end of Tet, the weather has warmed faster than usual. The vegetables have grown quickly, but because of that, they are aging quickly as well. Every morning when she walks through the field, she sees more plants beginning to bolt, and the sight makes her heart feel heavy with worry. She explains that working alone, she cannot harvest fast enough. Each day she manages to collect only a few baskets of vegetables, while the rest of the field continues growing under the sun. If the harvest does not happen soon, the entire field could be lost. Tu Diem turns her head and looks toward the distant rows of green stretching across the field. She understands that feeling well. Farming is different from other work. A whole month of effort can disappear if the harvest is delayed by only a few days. She tells Tu Phan that if help is needed today, she can go down to the field immediately. She has no urgent work today. Tu Phan studies her face for a moment. Her eyes show both gratitude and hesitation. Then she nods. But right after that, she says something that surprises Tu Diem. She tells her to harvest freely in the field and keep whatever money the vegetables bring when they are sold. She says it should be considered help in saving the vegetables that are still good before it becomes too late. Tu Diem quickly shakes her head and refuses. She says she only came to help and cannot take any money. Tu Phan looks at her more firmly, though her voice stays calm and gentle. She explains that they now see each other as sisters. Helping each other during difficult times is natural. If the vegetables are not harvested now, the entire field will begin flowering in a few days, and when that happens, no one will want to buy them. A light breeze moves through the beetle palm leaves, causing them to rustle softly above the yard. Tu Diem glances toward the field once more before finally nodding. Soon after that, she begins walking along the narrow dirt path that leads down toward the field. The sun has already climbed higher in the sky, and the warmth is beginning to build. Behind her, Tu Phan stands in the yard, watching her figure slowly disappear down the path. Inside her chest, a small sense of relief appears. At least today she will not have to face the entire field alone. In a small room at the far end of the village, Toan sits quietly beside a wooden table. The dim yellow light of an oil lamp falls across his thoughtful face. The room is so quiet that the faint wind passing through the crack in the window can be heard clearly. Old memories begin returning to him one after another. Some memories warm his heart, but others leave a heavy weight in his chest. He remembers the most difficult time of his life, when he felt as if he had lost everything. His work collapsed, and many people he once trusted slowly disappeared from his life. The only person who remained beside him during that time was Tu Diem. He also remembers his mother. The disappointment from that time still feels clear and painful. He once could not understand why she made a decision that hurt the entire family, even though their lives were not lacking anything. Toan slowly exhales. When he thinks about Tu Diem, the heaviness in his chest eases slightly. She does not have a high education and does not hold an important position in society. Yet her sincerity has always earned his deep respect. Besides her, there is also Tu Phan, Thu's mother, and the elderly woman who once helped him when he was in serious trouble. Each of them feels like a small lamp during the darkest period of his life. March 8th is approaching. Toan looks down at the small notebook resting on the table. He writes a few short lines before pausing to think. He decides that today he will set aside his work. Something more important must be done first. He wants to do something meaningful for the people who once helped him. The gifts do not need to be expensive, but they must carry genuine gratitude. He stands up, puts on his jacket, and steps outside. The morning air feels fresh and clean. The village road is still quiet. In his mind, he has already formed a short list. A gift for Tu Diem, a gift for Thu's mother, a gift for Tu Phan, and something for the elderly woman as well. Out in the cabbage field, the midday sun shines directly onto the ground. Long rows of green vegetables stretch across the land in neat lines. Tu Diem bends down and cuts the cabbage stems with a sickle. Each clean slice produces a short, dry sound. She works steadily without stopping. Every time she cuts a cabbage, she places it carefully into the basket before bending down again for the next plant. Sweat slowly gathers along her forehead and runs down her face. The back of her shirt is already damp from the heat. After nearly an hour of work, the basket is more than half full. At that moment, Tu Phan walks along the irrigation path toward her carrying extra twine for tying vegetables. When she sees how much has already been harvested, she stops in surprise. She did not expect Tu Diem to work so quickly. The two women sit beneath the shade of a roadside tree to rest for a moment. Tu Phan lifts one bundle of vegetables and studies it carefully. She nods when she notices that Tu Diem has tied 3 cabbage heads together in each bundle. She explains that selling each bundle for 10,000 jong will make it easier for customers to accept the price. If there are only 2 vegetables in each bundle, people might complain that the price is too high. Tu Diem smiles shyly and explains that she thought the same thing. Just then, the sound of a motorbike approaches slowly along the dirt road. A man stops beside the field and looks down at the bundles of cabbage. He asks about the price. Tu Diem answers calmly that each bundle costs 10,000 jong. The man frowns and says that the price in the market is only 8,000. The atmosphere suddenly grows tense. Tu Phan glances at Tu Diem. If they sell for less money, the profit will almost disappear. But if they refuse, the vegetables may wilt under the hot midday sun. Tu Diem thinks quietly for a few seconds before responding that if he buys several bundles, the price can be lowered slightly. The man studies the full basket and finally agrees to buy 5 bundles. When the motorbike drives away, Tu Phan releases a long breath of relief. The two women look at each other and smile. At least the morning has brought their first customer, and that means the field still holds hope. The afternoon sun hangs lower in the sky, but the heat still lingers above the cabbage field. The rows of vegetables stretch across the land like green waves under the light. Tu Diem continues working without slowing down. The sickle moves through the stems with a steady rhythm. Each cut is quick and precise, followed by the soft sound of leaves brushing against the basket as another cabbage is placed inside. Sweat gathers along her temples and runs down the side of her face. Her shoulders feel heavy, but she does not stop. She keeps thinking about the field behind her. If too many vegetables remain uncut, tomorrow they might begin to turn bitter under the sun. Tu Phan walks along the narrow irrigation path, carrying another bundle of twine. She stops beside the basket and looks at the growing pile of vegetables with surprise. She did not expect the harvest to move this quickly. The field that had looked impossible to finish this morning now feels slightly more manageable. She kneels down beside the basket and begins tying the bundles more tightly so they will be easier to carry to the road. The two women work side by side without speaking much. The quiet cooperation between them feels natural. From time to time, they glance toward the far end of the field where the sun touches the tops of the vegetables, both silently calculating how much can still be harvested before evening. A few more motorbikes pass along the road. Some riders slow down, looking at the vegetables stacked beside the path. One woman stops and asks about the price. Tu Diem repeats the same answer calmly. 10,000 jong for a bundle of 3. The woman studies the vegetables, touches one leaf, then nods and buys 2 bundles. The small sale brings a brief moment of relief. Each customer means fewer vegetables left to spoil in the field. Not long after that, a pickup truck drives slowly along the road. The driver leans out of the window and asks how many bundles are available. His voice suggests that he might be a trader from the nearby market. Tu Phan steps forward and answers carefully. She explains that they are harvesting as fast as they can and that more bundles will be ready soon. The driver climbs out and examines the vegetables. For a moment, his expression is difficult to read. Then he says he might return later in the afternoon if there are enough bundles ready. The truck drives away, leaving dust floating in the warm air. Tu Phan watches it disappear down the road and quietly says that if the trader returns, they might be able to sell a large portion of the harvest in one trip. The thought pushes both women to work faster. The sickle continues moving. The basket fills again. More bundles appear beside the path. Slowly, the pile grows into a small green stack that becomes visible from the road. The afternoon light softens, and the wind begins to move gently across the field. For the first time since morning, Tu Phan allows herself to believe that they might actually save most of the crop. In another part of the village, Toan steps into a cosmetics store in the busy market area. Bright white lights fill the room, and soft fragrance drifts through the air. Shelves are lined with bottles, boxes, and small containers arranged neatly in rows. Toan pauses near the entrance for a moment, clearly unsure where to begin. This is not a place he visits often. A young employee notices his hesitation and approaches with a polite smile, asking if he needs help. Toan nods slowly. and explains that he wants to buy something useful for someone who spends long days working under the sun. The employee listens carefully and begins pointing out several items. Sunscreen to protect skin from strong sunlight, facial cleanser that removes sweat and dust after a long day outside, moisturizer to prevent the skin from becoming dry and cracked, cushion foundation for light makeup when needed, lipstick with a natural color, a small bottle of facial mist that can refresh the skin in hot weather. Toan listens closely, occasionally asking simple questions. As each item is placed on the counter, he imagines Tu Diem returning from the field in the evening, tired but smiling, washing the dust from her face after a long day of work. After a moment, he adds 2 bottles of body wash to the pile. One is for Tu Phan and the other for Thu's mother. Both women have quietly supported him in the past. The employee carefully wraps the items in a neat paper bag. When Toan pays and steps outside, the sounds of the market rush toward him. Vendors call out prices. Motorbikes pass by in every direction. The noise contrasts sharply with the quiet fields outside the village. He walks slowly through the crowded street until he reaches the edge of the market, where several farmers are selling vegetables along the roadside. For a moment he stops when he recognizes a familiar figure sitting beside a large basket. Tu Diem wipes sweat from her forehead and calls out to passing customers, inviting them to look at the fresh cabbage bundles. Toan pauses several steps away, pretending to study the vegetables like any other customer. He walks closer and lifts one bundle, examining it carefully. The leaves are fresh and firm. Tu Diem smiles politely and thanks him when he agrees to buy one bundle. For a moment she does not recognize him. Only when he begins walking away does she look again and realize who the customer was. The surprise makes her laugh quietly to herself. Even after a long day of work, that small moment brightens her mood. Later that afternoon, the sky begins to change color as the sun moves lower. The roadside cafe near the edge of the village becomes quieter as most travelers continue their journey home. Tu Diem sits at one of the small wooden tables, waiting. Her fingers hold tightly onto the strap of the basket, resting beside her chair. Every time a motorbike approaches, she looks up, expecting someone. When Toan finally arrives, his footsteps are steady but calm. He sits down across from her and places the paper bag on the table. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The sound of leaves moving in the evening wind fills the space between them. Then Toan slowly opens the bag and shows her the items inside. Sunscreen, cleanser, moisturizer, cushion, lipstick, facial mist, each one carefully chosen. Tu Diem stares at the contents with wide eyes, clearly overwhelmed. She explains that she has never owned such things before. Toan smiles gently and tells her that the store employee helped him choose the items. He simply wanted to make sure the gifts would help protect her skin from the sun she faces every day in the fields. The conversation slowly becomes warmer. Tu Diem relaxes and begins to talk about the harvest. She explains that the vegetables sold well today and that a trader might return tomorrow. Toan listens carefully and nods, clearly pleased to hear that the field may still be saved. He then mentions that he also bought gifts for Tu Phan and for Thu's mother. They both deserve appreciation for everything they have done. The evening sky slowly turns red along the horizon. The air becomes cooler as the day ends. For Tu Diem, the small box of cosmetics in front of her feels like more than a simple gift. It feels like recognition for the effort she has quietly given to others for so long. Tears appear briefly in the corner of her eyes, but they are not tears of sadness. They are the quiet release of a happiness she did not expect. Toan watches her reaction with a calm expression. Inside his chest, the promise he made earlier in the day feels stronger now. The past may still carry its weight, but moments like this remind him that kindness can always move forward. As the evening light fades, the two of them sit together in the calm air of the roadside cafe, sharing a quiet moment that marks the beginning of something steadier than either of them expected.
Một buổi sáng đầu xuân yên tĩnh, Từ Diem ghé thăm Tu Phan và phát hiện cánh đồng rau đang đứng trước nguy cơ mất trắng vì thu hoạch không kịp. Hai người phụ nữ quyết định cùng nhau ra ruộng cắt rau để cứu lại phần mùa vụ còn lại. Dưới cái nắng chưa gay gắt, họ làm việc liên tục, vừa hy vọng bán được rau, vừa lo thương lái ép giá. Trong khi đó, ở một góc làng, Toàn nhớ lại quãng thời gian khó khăn và những người đã âm thầm giúp anh đứng dậy. Khi ngày 8 tháng 3 đến gần, anh quyết định chuẩn bị những món quà nhỏ để bày tỏ lòng biết ơn, đặc biệt dành cho Từ Diem. Cuối ngày, giữa không gian yên tĩnh của quán ven đường, món quà bất ngờ khiến Từ Diem xúc động và mở ra một hy vọng mới.